Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sama. I'm Derek Mazzoni, your host. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate your time. Hope you're doing well. And if you're not, I hope that changes soon. We are having a special Sama session today with a friend who I've had on before. We've met a few times. He's a pretty amazing producer, and he finds himself in really interesting situations and has the ability to tell stories of people who are incredibly marginalized. He's a pretty powerful character in his ability to find these artists and to give them voice. He's a record producer. He's a musician. We're going to be talking about a new project that he has called The Conception of the Oldest Voices in the World. It's a project that he did in Azerbaijan on the Iranian border, where he found literally some of the oldest people on the planet. His name is Ian Brenner. He's a Grammy award-winning music producer. He did the Zomba Prison Project. He did Tin Ado Wen. He's the author of 6 books. And since 1993, he taught violence prevention at, where did he do this? At the University of London, UC Berkeley, and National Academy of Science in Rome. Let's see. He is best known for his work in music, but he's also been featured in television. He's been featured in a few movies. And every time I show up at Womex or in places like that, where there's a lot of us, these advocates for global music, he's there and he's got something to say. And usually it is a counter to the current narrative that's going on right now. He's been all over the world. He's recorded artists in Rwanda, Malawi, Romania, Comoros most recently, Pakistan with Ustad Sami, who we love very much, Vietnam, and more. And he was he was part of an Emmy Award-winning segment of 60 Minutes with reporter Anderson Cooper. I always love talking to him, and it's a pleasure to have him here. Ian Brennan, thanks for being on Sama.
Oh, thank you. It's great to speak with you again.
Tell me about this project, because as we were speaking before, COVID is still with us here, obviously, but you ended up going to Azerbaijan for this work that's going to be released in April on 6 Degrees Records, The Oldest Voices in the World. These are some of the oldest people in the world. You go there during COVID when some of the oldest people in the world are the most at risk. How did that come about, and what was that like when you were there?
Well, it was incredibly moving and exceeded all expectations. I mean, we operate from the belief, my wife and I, Marilena Hozadeli, who does all the video and photography for the projects, operate from we're convinced that there's music everywhere, and so we're very against the idea that some places are more musical than others, and that's been proven to us time and again. Obviously, everything's on a spectrum. Some places, maybe like Cuba or Mali, maybe have more music or more diverse music, but there is music everywhere, and it is diverse. And like a lot of these ideas, they percolate and take time. We lose money doing this. We don't have all the time in the world. We got to do other things too. But it had been in the works for quite a long time. And we finally had the chance to go, during COVID. I mean, it was, in a lull, let's say, but during the time of multiple tests and masks and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were saddened to discover that many people in the community had passed. I mean, a recurrent story when we'd finally find somebody, not finally, but as we'd, be in the community talking to people, and they'd say, yeah, there's a 108-year-old that lives, 5 villages over, and we'd go and meet with them, and we'd discover that they had just passed away, a month before or 2 months before, very recently in most cases. So that made these voices all the more cherished and all the more valuable in a sense. There was more of an urgency as a result of that, an unexpected urgency. And it is the region where reportedly the oldest man in the world is from, the Talysh Mountains. They claim that he lived to be 168, and that many people in the area have lived well beyond 100. And so that was the motivation for going there, as well as the fact that, they're a marginalized community. They're like so many communities that have been split in half by a national border of bigger and more powerful countries. So after the Russian-Iran war, they just split their region in half right through the mountains. So on one side, they're marginalized by Iran because they're speaking a different language that's endangered to some degree, and on the other side, they're in the very south, tucked away in the very south corner, way up in the mountains on dirt roads of Azerbaijan, which is a very rich country actually. It's rich with a lot of natural resources, and the city is futuristic. I mean, the city's one of the most incredible places I've ever been as far as
What's
looking.
the city's name?
Baku, and
Baku.
it looks like Blade Runner or something. And then you drive a few hours south and you wind your way up into the mountains, and people are living without running water and without electricity, and it's a very ancient way of life.
What drew you to this?
Well,
Like specifically, I know that it was like, obviously this is where the oldest man in the world lives, but I know you. You've been to Malawi, you've been to Vietnam, you've been all over the place. What drew you right now at this time to this corner of Azerbaijan?
well, unfortunately, there's if you throw a dart at a map of the world, you're going to more likely hit places that are unrepresented in terms of media, popular media at least, than are not. And within those countries, though, I think the nuance that's lost is the communities that are denied a platform or a voice within their own nation. That they maybe make up a small percentage population-wise. And so, we've done our best to focus different places when possible. So we've been to Central Asia, and we've been to Eastern Asia, and we've been to the Middle East, quote unquote, and we've been to many places throughout Africa that are generally the places that are not visited as much, and then also in South America, places that are not visited as much as frequently. And many of these projects are, deliberate acts of anti-ageism. So with Yana Momina, who's 74 years old, with Ustad Sami, who's now 77, these are great artists, and I think if people listen closely and not superficially, they'll discover that they're incredibly progressive and futuristic. I think what Ustad Sami does simultaneously draws back on, a tradition, a reimagined tradition from 1,000 years before, but also is much more, avant-garde than most bands that claim to be or look to be.
Ustad
So
Sami is the Pakistani
yeah,
singer.
yeah, the of the Surti system, which is a 49-note microtonal system, and all improvisatory. So every time he does a piece, it's going to be different. And so, working with people that are over 100 years old, for the most part, is something that no one seems to know has ever been done. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of anything even close to that. What's considered an aged voice is oftentimes, half that age or a little bit more than half that age. But I've always been fascinated by voices as they age. In many cases, I prefer them. I mean, not fetishize them, but it's not always going to be the case. But I think that Sinatra became a better singer in many ways as he got older. I think Merle Haggard was at his best near the end of his life, when he had to work around the breathing problems that he developed. And there was more nuance, and there was more depth and more texture. So, this is something that has always interested me, but now we're talking about voices of people, again, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and instead of people over 100 years old. And I feel like the voices of the people from Azerbaijan on this project are incredibly moving, and mostly what I'm interested in is not preserving anything and not, ethnomusicology. I'm interested in hearing sounds that I've never heard before, because I feel like there's too much sound that's repetitious. Now there's even, people celebrate the disintegration of genres, but what we hear now is that everything just kind of sounds the same.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound very original most of the time. What passes for originality is usually elemental. Like, oh, they put a tabla on a song that doesn't
Yeah,
normally
yeah,
have a
yeah.
tabla, and that's passing for.
It's that Orientalism that's been with
Yeah,
us forever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so when I hear a voice, it happened at Zomba Prison. It's happened in many places in the world. Yana Momina is a really good example of a featured singer in this way that I've never heard anybody in the world that sounds like her. And I know that most people probably wouldn't like it, but I know that it's deliberate. I've heard her do the same songs 10 times, and she knows what she's doing. She's doing it on purpose.
Hmm.
And it doesn't sound like anybody I've ever heard in my life. Um, and that happened in Zomba Prison in many cases with people that were not singers, didn't consider themselves musicians. And it was very powerful. And that's exactly what happened here in Azerbaijan as well, where the majority of these people were not musicians. They were not people that had sung before,
Hmm.
publicly. But some one man was a shepherd, and he always sung to his flock, and so he was powerful. Quite a powerful singer actually. But otherwise, they weren't professional singers by any stretch. But their voices are highly original.
I love how you seem to find a way to weave this narrative, which is core of what I do, both at KEXP and on Sama, where we celebrate diversity, but we focus on championing our shared humanity. Now, that can be considered like, a glib little hallmark um, uh, comment, but it's not. It's literally our shared humanity is all of these voices. I remember being at the Recording Academy with you years ago, when everybody was just pushing Nigeria, and it was the big transition from world to global, and now back to world again. It's the whole vibe. But it's like you have to understand that there is more than just one family, the Kutis, or one South African artist, Lace Black Mambazo, or just one or two or three countries that represent all of Africa. This is still the record industry going down there, controlling, and then filtering out the things that they think are palatable. And you're right. Often that just creates a mush. It does nothing unique about it. It's like the same thing over and over again with that little spice. But that spice doesn't really speak to where those people were, what their experiences
Yeah.
were. And the thing that really struck me about this project is that pushing back against ageism is super important, especially now where people are living longer, and so their experiences need to be shared because we can learn from them in a way, and especially through music, especially through art, in a way that like a lecture just won't be able to do it for you. So for you to actually advocate for this and present this is really powerful, but at the same time, you're still dealing with this pushback, shall we say. I don't think it's like, no, Ian, we hate you, no, but it's this like, oh, just ignore this, we don't care about this. It's you're getting pushback from a cultural perspective, from an ageist perspective, and also from a commercial perspective. So how do you counter that? How do you I'm talking to you right now, so this work is super important, and I'm learning from it all the time. But what is your, like, I don't say elevator pitch, but what is the thing that you do to convince like 6 Degrees Records and Glitter Beat and others going like, this is important, and where they've got so many other options to look at. What's your magic, Ian? How
Well,
do you
I
get
don't.
people
I
to do
I
this?
don't. I think the magic is in the artists and their uniqueness, and just listening closely to people is a powerful act, both for the listener, maybe more for the listener, but also for the speaker. And so we focus on process and not product. So we've recorded a lot more than we've ever released. We've recorded a lot of records that are really good, but not good enough in a sense, meaning not unique enough. And
Mm-hmm.
I really strive to be ethical and to have integrity. And I've been doing this since I was a little child, making records and making music. This is what I've committed my life to, and I'm not going to stop. And so, I really believe that a record should have a reason to exist, an objective reason to exist. And I think the majority of material, now we're up over 500,000 songs being uploaded to Spotify weekly. The majority of this material does not meet that mark. And so the real enemy, so to speak, I don't believe in enemies, but the real enemy is mediocrity. It's not that it's bad. If it was bad, it could even be good by being bad. Or if it was bad, people could more easily
Pitch.
root it out. It's the mediocrity that's the issue. And so for me, it's not about whether I like it or somebody else likes it. It's, have you ever heard a voice that sounded like this before? Then listen
Hmm.
to it. And you're not going to like it the first time. We don't like most food when we eat it the first time.
Hmm.
We like it if we try it a second time or a third time or a fourth time. And diversity is good for us. It's not only good for us, it's necessary. You can eat one good thing all the time, and if you only eat that one good thing all the time, you're going to die. You know, you need diversity on
Yeah.
all levels. And so again, you know, it's sad, but there isn't that much originality out there. And so music has become more and more of a visual form. And so that's where most people put their energy. They're visual artists, and that's fine, but it's certainly not the tradition that I'm interested in. And it's not the level of commitment that I think listeners deserve for sonic works.
So you can, looking at your body of work, and it's quite diverse. You've done a lot of different things, and you've gone the range from pop to some pretty challenging work um, that requires repeated listening, and then it's not packaged. It's not like this it takes more than 3 sentences to explain what's going on there. Zomba Prison Project is a prime example. There's so much depth in that, and how do you keep that bubbling up? How do you keep yourself inspired? How do you, because it's like you're recording this work because you want it to be released, so you want an audience for it. You want people to discover it. You want them to have the kind of experiences that I have, where it's like, okay, this has made my life better and made it more interesting, that I found something here through your help, and I want to, I'm lucky because then I can champion these artists and give them a platform, and hopefully they can have a career. But sometimes they never have a career. Sometimes, I remember having this conversation with you about Comoros. It's like they don't even have an airline. A plane flies in once a week, maybe. What do you do to help these artists come up? Because you were saying that you have 500,000 uploads a week now, which makes sense. Spotify. There's so much noise. What do you do to make sure that these bits of beauty and everything are able to have a place there? Because you're doing this because of passion. It's not the money, obviously. Well, I want to know a little bit about, like, what's your process? What are you thinking about here? Where it's like, okay, this is important. This is what I want to do now to make sure that this artist, that I'm not wasting their time, they're not wasting my time. What can we do? Does
Yeah,
that
I
make
mean
sense?
yeah, absolutely. It's a benefit to the artist. We always pay people, as modest as it may be, something on money losing projects. And in some cases, it's been relatively life changing because of the utility of the amount of money.
Hmm.
When you're working with artists like the good ones in Rwanda or the Malawi Mouse Boys in Malawi, they're surviving on $1 or two a day for their entire families. So $100, $1,000, $2,000. These have huge impact in a way that would almost not even be noticed by a lot of people now living in San Francisco or Seattle or New York
Hmm.
or London or wherever it may be. So careers is really not the goal. I'm a big believer in the musical tradition being one of volunteerism, and I'm a big believer in volunteerism to begin with, unconditionally giving, and not wanting anything from the process but the experience itself. And so that's where the roots of everything we're hearing, that's become diluted or distorted, the roots of it all come from that. It all comes from herders like the shepherd in the Talysh Mountains, or it comes from you know you know people working on trains, laying track across the country, or people that were farmers and they're playing their farm tools at night. That's the roots of popular music. It's not professional musicians. So whenever I meet someone in any given country who's practiced at it. I'm interested, but I'm rarely impressed ultimately. And it's not an intellectual judgment. It's just that when they sing, they're coming from their head and not from their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear somebody make a sound that they've never made before, when you listen to a song being born for the first time, when you hear a sound that you've never heard before either, these are, incredibly powerful and spiritual experiences. And they're plentiful. They're plentiful. I believe everybody has one good song in them. And most people have not more than one good song in them. So that's why I don't really believe in careers in music. I wish people would stop, go away, and then be given enough support that they didn't have to necessarily work a job, but to stop, cluttering the marketplace. The volume of noise is the main thing that people are competing against. It's not quality. And the idea that it's a meritocracy or that the cream will rise to the crop was never entirely true and is now almost entirely untrue.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, that's a tough nut to crack right there, because as long as there's money to be made, it's going to be really difficult to get these artists, to get people to stop. It's like right now I can write a song in a day on my phone and put it out and distribute it on that same phone, and it's just a bunch of presets and auto tune my voice. So you're right. It's like that. It doesn't suck, but it's not good. So it's just that middle place, and for it to, people are sometimes are lazy, and if it sounds like something they're familiar with, like obviously something like 80% of all the music that's ever listened to on any of the streaming platforms is legacy. It's library music. It's stuff you've heard before. You're not discovering new stuff on this, new music. So it's really hard to get that out. And it's really kind of sad, because you and I are both in the space, because something about music, something about artists like Nako Namchalak, and also Ustad Sami and Tanadawen and others. But the first time we heard them, we're like, I'm never going to forget this. This is resonating with me in a way that it's changed my perspective on things. And especially when it's like artists like, the good ones from Rwanda, or the Malawi Mouse Boys. You have a window into their country, into their life. Their songs are about, I remember the song about 1981 and soccer that Good Ones put out. That's a beautiful story. That takes you there. It's so much more powerful than like just, I don't want to sound like I'm too judgy, but I will be judgy. It's so much more powerful than like, a 50-year-old singing about, a relationship from a high school's perspective. It's just, it's sad. And this is stuff that makes humanity a better species, and hopefully will help us grow. So, dude, don't stop. I know it's hard. I've had many conversations with you where you look quite frustrated at this, and also, you're winning Grammys. The stuff is out there. Record labels are saying yes. So there's a lot of people like us that are like, "Yay, Ian, you're doing it, and this is awesome work." So on that note, tell us a little bit about some of the other projects you got going on right now. What should we be looking for?
Well,
Or
we
listening for?
we always have stuff in the works. Thank you for all that you said. The main focus for us, going back to what you were just talking about, is and a question you asked earlier as well, is that I'm interested in timeless voices that you can't really place. They do come from a time and place, and the recording is live without overdubs. And so it started here, it ended there. It was a group of people together in a specific time and place, usually outdoors, playing together. It's an event that actually happened, that you have a window into. And that's not the only way to record, but when it works, it's incredibly powerful. I don't know if there's a more powerful form of recording when it works.
Yeah.
And it is experimental because you don't have control. The moment has control, and the environment has control. But truly timeless voices, whether that's Nick Drake or Nina Simone or Billie Holiday, I mean, these voices are around for a reason, because they're not trendy, because people can relate to them. A person born after they've died can still relate to them, emotionally. And I believe that Adrian Kazagera from the Good Ones, and excuse me, and Nelson Maligo from the Malawi Mouse Boys, that these are voices that do that very thing and will continue to do that very thing. And if it moves one person, 20 years from now, and they don't even know what country it's from, what continent it's from, male or female, they're not sure. They don't know what they're saying. It's in a different language. But if they connect with it emotionally, that is invaluable, because so often we're not connecting emotionally with the material that we're viewing, streaming, listening to. It's just entertainment. And entertainment's fine, but it's not the best use of our time, certainly, most of the time or all the time. People can choose that, but are they really choosing it? Are they really choosing it? I mean,
No, it's just being fed.
yeah, and people that look so carefully at the ingredients of everything they eat, are they really thinking about the ingredients of what they're taking in with their eyes and their ears? And that's what makes it dangerous, is that the fact that it is trivialized. Oh, it's pop music, it's this band's like the Beatles. No, they're not like the Beatles. Like, don't ever tell me a band's like the Beatles. I don't even like the Beatles, but don't tell me a band's like the Beatles. There's no band like the Beatles.
Yeah.
So don't compare anybody to them. Oh, this is that generation's Beatles. Are you fucking kidding? They don't even write their own songs. And their songs are written not by a person, but written by a committee of 12 or 14 people that have never met each other in most cases.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's true. It's true. It's a machine. It's like it's a factory. It's just there to make it work.
Yep.
So that somebody gets paid, and usually not the artist, or usually their managers. But that's a longer, whole other conversation. Right now, we're talking about the oldest voices in the world, Azerbaijan. Thank you for bringing me back to the sky, out in April on 6 Degrees Records. Ian, obviously, you're going to continue doing great work. I'm going to continue talking to you about this, and we're going to have a little video right now. Your wife was able to film something in Azerbaijan, and so we're going to share that with our audience right now, and then once the record is out, we'll create some kind of audio version of it so we can play it on KXP and other platforms, because it's good work. And it's really, started the conversation talking about COVID, talking about old people, and talking about how this had affected them. Like, the people are living in, I remember all the ads, like Mel Brooks behind a glass window is like, we can't get this because we're going to die. So the fact that you're going to find the oldest people in the world during COVID, there's some kind of philosophical story in there I can't even quite fathom. You're going to that extreme. So I thank you for doing that. I thank you for recording this, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Brennan.
Thank you.
Be well and success.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you like Sama. If you love what we're doing here, please support us, subscribe to us on all of our social media channels so we can offer opportunities for artists and producers and writers such as Ian Brennan to have a platform and share their amazing work. Be well, be safe, and talk to you soon.